It is criminal. They are carrying weight, heavy weights in the front belly region.
Uh, but 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 she also distracts the concentration of even the most hardened and intelligent men.
And they just look inappropriate and they're not doing anything, but they have made their body into some emphasized sex doll.
Hello, Africa. My name is Robert Kavshenga, the bad native from Kampala. And before we start, reminder to like, subscribe, and follow us because that's the way we're able to bring back the conversation every week.
I am Charles Onyango Obo in Nairobi.
And I'm Adesua Giwa Sage here from Lagos, Nigeria.
And Adesua, tell us what you're having for breakfast and why you're having such a special breakfast this morning.
I'm so excited. I'm having dragon fruit from my mom's farm. Look, it is so good. It is the
and
tastiest
ve-
dragon fruit I've ever had in my life, and it's from my mom's farm. You know, she's out here growing juicy dragon fruit in Badagry in Lagos.
and
And
imagine.
but really, that's why you're a bad girl. How can you say my mom's farm? You should say our farm. Bob, did you notice? She she is so detached from the soil.
She's an urban girl. She's an urban girl. We lost
I'm a
her to the
city
town.
girl.
Her nails cannot be found anywhere near soil. The manicure are good, and you know.
Wow. No, I can help with the operations of the farm, but not the tilling and the toiling. That's
You know,
beyond
Bob,
and
me.
if you read the column by Joachim Buembo, that's why Joachim Buembo is this long-term editor and writer in East Africa and author.
yeah.
He's one of the articles we're looking at. He talked of women who buy false fingers so that they look like they never worked a day in their life. But this one doesn't have to buy the false fingers.
And by the way, talking of which, I think that's a good way for us to get into our conversation today. And we're talking about false body parts and enhancements and all sorts of things. So I think that's a good way for us to enter the conversation. And we talk about the exploding economy around enhancements, things like nail enhancement, curves, body parts, where people are now adding enhancements to their appearances to look curvy. Of course, there's the age old bleaching industry where people are changing skin color. There is the big one of artificial hair. And all of this, in the past, we all assumed it was about vanity and just trying to look good. But, and I want to start with you, Charles, not that you have anything false, maybe teeth, we can check.
Oh yes, I have a couple of them and feelings.
Exactly. But what's driving this economy? What has changed that's making this explode? And please tell us what's the valuation so far?
Bob, the data. If you measure, uh, you know, false bottoms and
Mm,
those things, false toes, uh,
mm,
fingers, and all that. And I mean, it's interesting that we are seeing now. For the last few days, we've seen a lot of reporting on this from in African media. Uh, you know, there is no figure for Africa such. Africa is combined with the Middle East, and the number that they have in 2023, Bob and Adesua, the
mm.
market was 5.6 to $6 billion.
What?
Yeah, it is, and in another 5 years, it will more than double. Huh?
Hmm.
And but but the thing about that is that that is mostly for women. The one for men
Mm.
is is, uh, is just about 1 billion. But that
You know what? I have something to say here. As I
mm,
have to say something here. I've been thinking recently, as I watch
Yes.
news across Africa, and we let men get away with big bellies in a way that I think is criminal. It is criminal. They are carrying weight, heavy weights in the front belly region, and there is no one body shaming them. And I just think actually it is criminal, particularly when they are rich politicians and you can see it in their midsection. I think it's criminal. But
You know,
because
but
if
sorry,
but
back to
if they
you.
were leading, they wouldn't win elections
they
or
don't.
get a prize.
If they were lean, they have no promise. They are not. They don't have money. So,
No, but the thing is that men have the false.
Charles, before you go on,
Yeah,
because that's a big one, but I want to retire the issue of the men because I want to reassure Adesua that actually there is a lot of vanity on the side of men, especially aging men like myself. You see a lot of attempts to try and look young. So there is a lot of the hair dyeing industry that's exploding. So you find a lot of men trying so hard to maintain jet black hair. the
Mm,
the health the health the health industry has also exploded in terms of guys trying to look their bodies trying to look younger because they see they're trying to maintain this whole manhood thing. So men are also living a little longer. So even that, I don't know if it's being measured as part of the body enhancement, but definitely the hair industry, the clothing industry, we see a lot of older men investing in a younger appearance than before. So, and also the bleaching industry, quite a few of them are also applying creams. But the most interesting one, and this was pointed out by my wife, she said every single campaign poster that has been up in Uganda, everybody has been airbrushed, and I don't know what else they do. So
yeah.
so even artistically, you see that even the men have joined the bandwagon. So this is when I go back to Charles and ask Charles, what's driving the whole appearance economy? Let me put it that way.
yeah, the appearance economy, but broadly the attention economy, because when everything is mediated via social media, the
Mm,
primary is that you have to look good.
yeah.
You have to look good. And
Mhm.
the technology with all the filters and the photoshops, and now AI has just sabotaged. You have to look good. So for a lot of people, it is about looking good. Let me give you a shocking example. In Kenya, just a few weeks ago there was a story. In order to get calves, nice calves, and perhaps bigger breasts, young women get pregnant and abort.
Why? How does
Yeah,
that work?
because when you are pregnant, you get bigger breasts, and yeah,
Oh,
Yes,
and
I've seen that
and
on
uh,
social media.
and the really shocking thing is that there are some of them who do it uh maybe twice or even thrice until they get the right shape. And the
wow.
whole thing of that is because Instagram rewards particularly women of color, African and
Mm,
Latin American women, rewards
mm.
the ones who can show off a very well endowed rear and backside. So and the return on that in followers, in
Yeah.
follows, and therefore possible product endorsement is big.
No. Now turning to you to talk about what has been described elsewhere as the Kardashian effect, that a lot of
Mm.
uh, influencing and all of this stuff has been driven a lot by the Kardashians. And so you got a lot of young, particularly females, who must have curves. That's how you are able to capture the attention and leveraging it for product endorsements, as Charles said. How is this driving the, I mean, from your point of view, and you're much younger than us, so you would know this better. What do you understand and how do you see it? Let's first leave the whole body shaming and whatever issue aside. I mean, how is this playing out?
So I think before you have the Kardashian effect, you have the sexualization of black women and the black woman archetype as this type of Jezebel, highly sexual being that in American culture goes back eons to slavery, right? And there's the very famous woman from South Africa whose big backside was seen as such a crazy thing that she was paraded around America as if she was a zoo animal. And
Yeah,
what
Sarah Batman.
happens
Yeah.
in the yes, and then what happens in the 90s and the early noughts is black culture enters the mainstream in terms of hip hop and rap. And quite a lot of that music features sexualization of black women and more so their body parts. At the same time, you have anti-black rhetoric also in the rise, right? So you have sexualization of the big butt or the this and this, but the men are rapping. I remember about wanting a light skin, a yellow bone, a red bone, and that enters that cultural influence spreads across the globe, right? American soft power. When you have kids in Nigeria and Uganda and South Africa in the early 2000s are rapping about wanting a big booty and a red bone, which we I didn't
Hmm.
even know what that was. But
Hmm.
when this happens, you then have the Kardashians come in. They're exotic
Hmm.
whites. They're not really vanilla. There's a little bit of chai in there. And then what you see in American culture is that it's like this sudden realization that you can take these body parts, the big lips, the big butts, and just put it in a desired skin tone. Like you don't have to have it in a black woman, right? And there's a
Hmm.
lot of things to be said about African men liking hips, it being seen as like vitality, or maybe or being seen as a woman can, give birth or be a good mother, being more motherly. Like they like meat. African men like meat in general. But what you have in mainstream culture is this idea that you can take these ideal body types and put it in your ideal skin tone, which is no longer black. And so you then have actual black women getting fighting for this, right? Because it's like people say there's a joke on the internet that it's one thing to have a flat bum, it's another thing to have a flat bum as a South African. Like no one can believe it. Like like so there's an idea also that your identity becomes tied to how you present. So yes, the rise of social media, rise of rap music, hip hop and R&B, and the rise of American mainstream beauty ideals becoming kind of democratized is that you see it spread across the world. Something that's very interesting is that it kind of is an antithesis to like what you would see usually, because beauty ideals are usually judged by people wanting to look wealthy. Like you want to look like the
Hmm.
upper class of society. So whether that's being more light skinned, but usually or
Hmm.
more thin. Before it was being more pale because if you were out in the sun, then you're a worker. But if you're pale, that means you're of the upper class. So what? So
Hmm.
I think the world goes through a beauty ideal shift, because what you see now, if you look at the Kardashians now, they've reverted.
Yeah.
But the culture has shifted to where whiteness is cool again. They don't tan,
Hmm.
they don't wear the big wigs, they've removed the bum bums. They've reverted to being white
Oh.
again because of the pushback in American society to where white is right. If you look at Kim Kardashian today, she's stick thin, right? And so it also shows how culture shapes these expectations. But in what we have
Hmm.
in Africa, I think a huge thing is that when you have in at least in like a place like Nigeria, where you have a shrinking middle class, or you don't have a lot of options for women, upward mobility can be secured mostly by appearing desirable to men of the upper classes. And so it is a way to
Mm.
move up in life. is
Mm,
to be
mm,
attractive.
mm. But let me go back, and this is to both of you. Let's go back to the people who are actually creaming uh, off of this. That's those who manufacture the enhancements. I am talking about the Brazilian manufacturers of long Caucasian female hair pieces, uh, the plastic stroke rubber body parts that are then clothed as part of this. So again, uh, the other issue that I have with this is that the Africans have become consumers, more of consumers of these things than 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 manufacturers, or even benefiting from what would be their identity. And just to let you know, there is a place very colorfully named in Kampala. It's called Gazaland. It's a huge mall or building place or whatever shopping area, and the only thing they sell are hair pieces. That's all they sell. Just one location, every type of color, length, name it, whatever you
Just
wanted.
just one item.
Yes, just hair pieces. It's called Gazaland in one mall with
But
multiple
that's a
floors.
necessity. Hair pieces, that's a necessity. It's a
Is it?
necessity, no?
You
Yeah.
teach
Okay,
us.
look, for me,
Because
now, for example, right? I have natural hair. I can't go on TV with my natural hair. I can't go do news broadcasting with my natural hair. First of all, the anti-blackness and anti-Africanness, all the comments would be about my hair. It'll draw attention. Everyone would say, "Well, why did she do her hair? Is her hair not done?" It's my natural hair, the way it grows out of my scalp, but it's viewed as unprofessional even on the continent. We view natural hair on women as unprofessional or undone. Your hair has to be done, right? So it is necessity. It's a necessity in workspaces to have your hair done. Now, whether that be extensions or braids or wigs or weaves, you have to do something with it. And usually, because of our European beauty standards, because of our perception of wealth, that involves hair. Hair is also, I've said this before, is a class signifier or is a class indicator. Signifier or indicator? I think indicator is the word. Quality of hair can indicate your class or how much money you have, right? Because the idea is
it's
if you
still,
can afford expensive, you are a big
but
babe.
it is still an enhancement. It's still a hair enhancement. I mean, still an appearance enhancement industry. That's what I mean. That while you may see
Mhm.
it as a necessity, it is still part of the industry.
Yes, and and Bob, that one, the interesting thing is not only black and brown women who have to deal with that. What people don't realize that most of the white women they see on TV and in film actually have hair
Mm,
extensions.
Yes.
mm.
Yeah, it's very so there is a problem. There is a part, kind of the global patriarchy. So as the young radical women would say. But
Yeah.
Bob, to go back to this thing of, like, for example, backsides.
Yes.
I mean, this Adesua is correct about what he's saying, but the thing is, the there is a version of what someone called the canning of America.
Hmm.
That there is there is a moving away. In fact, there was, I remember sometime when Obama was president, there was this article in the Times which said that by the end of this century, most people in the world will look like Obama.
Yeah.
The overwhelming, most people
Majority.
in the world will largely look the same, and they will all look like Obama.
Yeah.
Because of just the way the world demographics is going.
Yeah.
But then people talk of turning, and what is actually happening is that the whatever else happens, the
Hmm.
politics of the black and brown woman's backside, I
Yes.
think is the most potent political factor. In fact, there is the view that if you want to understand what is happening in right wing Europe, if you want to understand the madness in America. It all
Mm.
comes to the size of the black woman's butt. That the insecurity that causes, the
And
all these things that Dua has, this was spoken of, they actually manifest itself, because there is this idea that, everything, even within the racism, this black woman, when she's well endowed, she looks unconquerable,
uh,
and
but 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 she also distracts the concentration of even the most hardened and intelligent men, and
yes,
therefore,
of all races.
yes, and causes instability in marriages, and therefore the social order of things as they're supposed to.
Oh no. Oh no. Oh no.
That's why you can have
Oh
you
no.
have your word. Charles, I don't know if you ever saw this. There was an interesting video of it's like maybe like 1.5 minutes, where some fairly well endowed lady walks by Cyril Ramaphosa, and you can see he's completely,
Yes, yes.
even even someone as grounded and of low temperament as Cyril can get
During a public
disorganized.
ceremony, he
Yes,
lost it.
yes. He lost his. You could see he was distracted. But let me go to the no. But there is, Charles. There is the bigger issue now, or not necessarily bigger, but the different issue of plastic surgery, and as an industry, how which used to be, for a small section of America's Hollywood elite, is now exploding. So you have, what is it called, bariatric surgeries, which become fashionable in Turkey, and you have a lot of Africans going to Turkey to have that done. And this is why you are talking about generally stomachs, but people think they need to deal with obesity in very, very radical manners. So there's bariatric surgery, there's plastic surgery, but there is also just the exploding and almost unregulated consumption of Ozempic as a way of people dealing with their appearances. Do we have a thinking about that, and where is it taking the continent?
Well, I would say to start off with, right, is that there's this school of thought that human beings are not supposed to see themselves this much. Perhaps would have seen ourselves in the
Hmm.
reflection in the water, in the stream back in the day, or maybe in a mirror. But now we are framing ourselves. We are obsessed with ourselves. We are consuming ourselves, and there's also the
Yes.
commodification. There's also the commodification of people's lives. They've turned their lives into
Yeah.
a commodity, into a product, and they're selling it on social media. And so when
Yeah.
that becomes a job and an avenue, selling your body not just in terms of prostitution, but selling your body in terms of your life or your lifestyle as a way to garner money and attention, then
Hmm.
plastic surgery, the rise of plastic surgery and Ozempic makes sense, right? People are
Hmm.
consumed with themselves, but they're also consumed with being consumed, online, on social media. Like it's true. It's
And,
absolutely
and, 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 and,
frightening.
and to be
And
consumed, they
then
have to be tasty and savory. Hmm? So,
no, it's true. No, but they have to appeal to certain demographics, right? And so
mhm, mhm.
and so you see people in an attempt to appeal to certain demographics, or also in an attempt to be, as I said, socially mobile. People are then paying money for this, right? Upward mobility in our societies are very stratified.
Yeah.
The gap between the hyper wealthy and the lowest quarter is wider than it's ever been. And so sometimes the only way to get from A to B is to catch somebody's attention, or to get a better job, or is to look attractive. Pretty privilege is a thing, right? People are
Mhm.
nicer to you when you're skinnier, when you're more attractive, both men and women. Or sometimes that could
Yeah.
be, but you get what I'm saying. It is a
Yes.
way for upward social mobility, and so it makes sense that people are doing this. And sometimes it's frightening. There are times where I see people and they have made themselves into physical embodiments of a sex doll. And I'm like, looking at you in the middle of the day looks inappropriate. I can't like I do,
Yeah.
you look inappropriate, right? I can't, like, do you go to the bank? Do you go to church? Do you go out, like, because sometimes I'm on flights between Lagos and Abuja, and a lot of these girls are on
Mm.
flights going to Abuja to catch a senator's eye, and they just look inappropriate, and they're not doing anything, but they have made their body into some emphasized sex doll, and so I mean,
Yeah,
but again, as I said, sometimes it's the only way to move up from the lower strata of society to the higher, or even to the middle, to land somewhere in the middle.
And Africa, we happen to be, generally speaking, in the continental, I mean, in the international geopolitical divide, we happen to be on the lower stratum, which takes me neatly to my next point. Charles Adesua spoke about the right wing emergence and the retreat of the Kardashians from looking tanned and colored and going back to the stereotype pale upper class. One of the other retreats that's happening is that America is retreating from the continent. And as you can see, Trump has met only 5 African leaders, and his contact with any form of African state really has been over a very specific issue of deporting or providing options to deport unwanted Americans or unwanted people that live in America, and a few selective security issues, maybe the Red Sea, Egypt, Israel, and so on. Can we just shift to that and just talk about where uh, Africa sits on Trump's agenda, looking at what he has done, and then how other countries, for instance, Japan, and I'll probably want to talk about Germany and Britain, are engaging with the continent? What has Trump done? How has he dealt? And why is the deportation issue? What exactly is at the center of this whole deportation foreign policy? And how many countries are participating in it?
they are three changes which I see. One, actually, it is, if you notice, Trump met a small group of 5 African leaders, but he also met a small group of European leaders. So, there is a part of this which owes perhaps to COVID. These are part of, how COVID has reshaped the world. But then, if you realize there was, then when there was the TICAD in Japan, there was a relatively smaller group of leaders because people like President Kagame and I think even Museveni has made this argument that Africa should stop this idea where all 54 leaders go and
Hmm.
have a small group who represent. So interestingly enough, it seems that we are already into that shift.
Hmm.
But now the thing which is troubling about this is how this deportation politics has come in
Mm.
because previously you would offer to host a military base for the
Mm.
Americans. You would offer your troops to go and fight, your enemy in a neighboring country. But it seems now this deportation, offering deportation terms, is the new race to the bottom.
Mhm.
It has replaced those other deals that you have, and it is really it is it's an embarrassing spectacle, Robert. Seeing re- revolutionary leaders who criticize the uh, African chiefs for accepting beads
Yeah.
and whiskey for
Hmm.
doing
Slaves.
this. Yeah, but in for a lot of people like Trump and writing Americans, I think they have a domestic constituency to appeal.
Yeah.
So you need a very very visible deportation program. But at the same time, you need just yesterday there was no 2 days ago there was this discussion. The Americans with all this anti-Chinese thing, anti-immigration thing, they are negotiating to
Hmm.
have 600,000 visas for Chinese students. and
Why?
and this so the guy say no, no, we want high quality. So the the first phase of playing to the best is done.
Yeah. Yes.
Now you are playing to their masters, the guys who bought the election for them, so that
Yes.
there is a part of it which is racist, domestic politics, and feeding red base to their working class base. But now the real face of it is coming. They are, and in fact there was this discussion. This woman was taking this Trump official to task, was saying, I
Mm,
she is a conservative commentator, was saying, I can't believe what you are doing. Eh?
mm,
He said that you you took us with you on a trip to attack University of California, to attack Harvard, and then he says now you want to bring 600,000 Chinese students. What does that mean? It means probably 5% or 2% of them will end up in Harvard. So, what was this whole battle against Harvard about, and all these other elite universities? So it's the game is on.
Adesua,
Mm,
the interesting thing about the deportation politics or the deportation foreign policy is 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 it only open to countries that have nothing substantive to offer? So you hear Swaziland, you hear Uganda, you hear possibly Somalia, but you don't hear this being aimed at countries like Nigeria. I mean, how come that there seems to be a mismatch? Is it also that the problem is that some of these countries, desperate for American validation and American engagement, have nothing best to offer other than that? I mean, that we moved away from USAID and PEPFAR and collaborations on things like that. We're now moving to offering, the only thing we can offer now is as a haven, a place where unwanted characters, criminals, the lowest lives that Americans don't want to be sent to Africa.
mm. It was offered to Nigeria. In fact, the foreign ministry said that that was part of the pressure that resulted in the tighter visa restrictions on Nigeria. Was that Nigeria was refusing to take in people from third countries who America did not want on their soil and who their countries would not accept them back. So it's been offered to Nigeria, I believe also to Ghana and Uganda. So it's definitely not about the size of the country or what they have to offer. I don't even think it's personal at all. It's personal to us, but it's not personal to them. As Donald Trump said, he thinks we're shithole countries, but also they just think might is right. This is an administration that thinks might is right. It's a strength. It's a display of their strength, right? I'm sure they saw what happened when it came to Rwanda and the UK, which fell through because of the EU human rights declaration or whatever, but it fell through. But what I'm sure once the right in America saw what was going on in England with the conservatives with Rwanda, they were like, well, that's a great idea. Let's get rid of them because the first countries that this was actually proposed to were countries in South America, right? So it's El Salvador, and then the videos of the prison started going viral and causing problems domestically, and then they were like, well, if we can't send them to South America, let's send the rest to Africa. It's just an idea of who can we push this onto, and we are seen as weak. And so, because we are seen as weak, both collectively and individually, they pushed it to our shores, and some people accepted it.
And Bob, the other thing about this is that they also use it as a deterrent. So actually, you're right. So the guys think that some of these African countries are so bad that the idea of sending people there
Mm-hmm.
will deter others from going to America. And you'd expect that, some of our leaders, and they are not fools. Some of them are fairly smart on other issues, that they would see this. because there are reports that this Abrego guy who was in El Salvador and brought back to the US and has been rearrested, that he will be deported to Uganda. And you just ask that, is Uganda ready for the kind of press that happened in El Salvador, where it is controversy and condemnation on all the major news networks, on the major blogs, and on the major podcasts. So and then you ask yourself, why can't Uganda see that actually this is a poison pill?
But Charles, you raise a valid question, and for me, the point is that these African countries, and not maybe the African countries, but the African political establishments are so vulnerable and weakened. They've been so accustomed to depending on being clients of the US and a large part of the West. they they no longer, they cannot exist in their own right outside of that kind of patronage, and are always looking for mechanisms by which they can maintain this patronage. I mean, in the 2000s, after 9/11, a lot of countries, Uganda being one of the leading ones, were leveraging the security option and the war on terror as an important partner for the US around the world. That card is now gone from them. Now, there were also other collaborations around science, the fight against the spread of diseases, and particularly HIV/AIDS, and allowing the American political establishment to look humanitarian and good. And then there came the question of refugees, that a country like Uganda was willing to accept refugees from other parts of Africa as long as the US was able to fund that. Now, with the gutting of USAID and the abandonment of the humanitarian aid approach, it seems to me that unless you have rare earth minerals and you're like Democratic Republic of Congo, or you're a strong economy like South Africa, you really don't have much to offer the political establishment in the US apart from giving them a way out in terms of something they desperately need for local politics. And that's why you said that, they must have a visible and muscular deportation policy for the base, but also to deter people. Question then, Charles, is how do you expect, both to you, Charles, and Adesua, do you expect any kind of backlash or any kind of outrage locally? And if so, is it the kind that can have political consequences, or is it that the political establishment on the African continent doesn't care? It's more, they've made the calculation that it is better to not annoy Trump than to annoy uh, your voters, because you can beat those guys into submission or into silence. You can threaten the worst in the world. So that's the way that I see it. I don't know how you guys see it.
Well, I think that the political establishment here cares more about annoying their population than Trump, believe it or not. Our political establishment is insecure for the most part. I mean, you do have a few who know they have a tight grip on their country and that there might not be a lot of pushback to this. I wouldn't imagine the same being I don't imagine that the public's reaction would be the same in different countries. In a country like Nigeria, there was a strong reaction in support of the government for not allowing American criminals come here, or not allow people who've been convicted of crimes be deported to Nigeria on America's behalf. It would not go down well in Nigeria, and I imagine that the Tinubu administration would care more about the public than about Trump in that aspect. I imagine maybe a Museveni or an Nguema, people who have a lock on their countries. I imagine that possibly for them, the how much they care would be different. I mean, is Eswatini the king of Eswatini that allowed, yeah, deportations into his country? There was pushback, but also like he has a secure hold on the country. So how much is he going to care? right? Versus somebody like Tinubu who has elections to think about in the next year, 2 years. It's not the same, I don't think.
Charles, what do you
Yeah,
think?
yes, and Bob, and you say, and that's why there is this whole thing, the politics of the appearance and the substance of it. Because if you look, um, uh, even the U.S. deportation program, El Salvador, if you look at Swatini, I think in Swatini you're looking at 5 people. Hmm? So, uh, the way the systems are set up, I don't think they'll ever really, or at least in the near term, achieve mass deportation. Mass. I mean, 10,000 people. You can arrest that number and put them in that crazy prison they have built in Florida. But so what's going to happen? And in fact, there is a cynical game here by both sides. So in Museveni's calculation, for example, he figures how many people can they possibly send, and then he says, well, maybe over the next few, 1, 2 years, 3 years, they will send 10. This is a country that has over 1.5 million refugees. So he figures that in terms of it being a political issue, in terms of the country being overrun by these people, it's that won't register. But what is the payoff for him? Hmm? The payoff is huge. Hundreds of
True.
millions of dollars, security corporation, and the guys let him run his election and things the way he wants and lock up the people he wants. So for 5 people or 3 people, that is a very good deal, Bob. So I think that that's the calculation that it won't that in a country like Uganda you are never going to have even 1,000 people deported
But,
from the US to
but,
Uganda.
but, but of course, that assumes, as you said earlier on, that there is no international outcry in terms of perceptions and media, of the kind that turns people against you as a country because of facilitating inhuman treatment of people. Especially, there was one, I think, the case of the Palestinian guy who was a resident and was deported to nowhere. So, if you have those types of people, rather than outright criminals being sent here, maybe it's the if you get international backlash, that might be a sobering element.
Yeah, it's but the the backlash will mostly be from kind of the more liberal and left elements. So so the guy figures that, okay, there is that. It might shift the domestic ground, in favor of the opposition slightly. But overall, in terms of securing the regime, in terms of the money coming, in terms of the American aid, so you tell the guy, say, we'll do this, but you must push money in the AU mission in Somalia, where I have 7,500 troops. Eh? So I think that there is that trade-off. I think it could so from things like probably even the economy and tourism and things like that, you might take a hit. But this, particularly in the places, in Kenya, a Kenyan president would struggle to get away with it, and like Adesua says, in Nigeria, maybe a Tinubu would. But in some of these countries, I think they might be able to survive it.
And so this is what I've been thinking. Okay, you send off 5 guys, maybe they're the worst criminals from Latin America, and you sent them to Eswatini. And then because you don't have effective systems in those places, those guys slip out of the countries and vanish into thin air. What happens? And it becomes news.
I mean, we saw what happened in Nigeria when the national security advisor took the Binance guys and then one slipped out. Right? thing, and they're like, and the second guy was then held, and they were like, he's a terrorist funder, blah blah blah,
Mhm.
and he came out and he was
Mhm.
like, Nuhu Ribadu wants to be president, and he wants to use crypto money to get there, and so international embarrassment is what happened. But in a place like Eswatini, like what's the value of international embarrassment versus a place like Ghana, Nigeria, or Uganda, right? Like
Right.
Eswatini is smaller than my local government area. Um, about the population about the population of a university here. And again, ruler. So it's not, so it really just depends on the country. Who would be upset by that is South Africa. And I'm sure the Trumpists, the Elon Musk will be happy if a few murderers slip into South Africa. So again, it's like a win-win for them.
So very quickly, just to wind up on this, is to ask if this is the new policy for America towards Africa. Can any of you sort of predict how the other parts of the world that are interested in Africa, and here I'm looking at the Europeans, I'm looking at the Chinese, I'm also looking at the other Asians, India, Japan, the Koreas. How do you see them responding to this retreat and therefore the new approach of this foreign policy?
Bob, it is it's been a windfall for them, and the best example of it comes from how countries like Japan have repositioned
Yeah.
themselves. If you see the you know the the summit was with African leaders. It it
Yeah.
it was so different. It was even more. They they pushed it so much for it to look like an equal partnership,
Yes.
and they are beginning to make what I think is they are mimicking the Chinese a bit, but they are going deeper
Yeah.
into critical investment and training in AI.
Hmm.
Uh, they are in urbanization, developing partnerships with the cities for urban renewal, which by the way, Bob, went terribly wrong in because one of the countries where they are exploring partnership, one amongst the countries is Nigeria and Tanzania. So Tanzania went
Hmm.
and said that Japan had given the country one of the cities there. and
Nigeria
and and,
did
and,
the
and
same thing.
it became such a big issue that the government had to come out and clarify. And of course,
Nigeria did the
there is the
same
one
thing.
from Nigeria, which perhaps uh, you know the show would talk about. So, Bob,
Yeah.
that is one of the things I'm seeing, that we are beginning to see some countries like you know Japan being smarter. Japan was always very smart about these things, but they
Yeah.
are getting smarter. Of course, we saw China. It
Yeah.
immediately saw an opportunity to, you know, give Africa more space, and they did the free trade thing. And the data shows that despite, the fact that China is not selling to America and all that, its global exports went
Have
up
maintained.
considerably. I
Wow.
think it's more than 7% from over the previous year. So
Wow.
uh, I think that from that point of view, we are going to see a lot of good coming from it, because the Japans and the Canadas and the South Koreas obviously are positioning themselves differently.
This well,
Yes.
what city do you give away?
What do you say?
What city did you give to the Japanese?
Oh
No, no,
no,
the Japanese give them,
yeah,
but in their
Oh,
case,
what's
Nigeria
it wasn't a city. It was
Nigeria
go
came
ahead,
out to
Adesua.
say that. So after GCAD 9, because so there's this issue, right? President Tinubu, along with his vice president, have budgeted over 8 billion naira for their foreign trips this year. And so
Wow.
anytime he travels, they feel the need to justify it. But instead of justifying it with something real and tangible, they lie. They lie. They once said he was the first African leader to ring the bell at NAFDAC or, in New York. He was not even the first Nigerian leader. It was so embarrassing a lie. They went to the UAE, and then we saw videos of Nigeria had the most delegates, I think, bar one country at COP28. None of those, they don't even know anything about the climate. And then the lists of the names of people were coming out, and it was from, like, celebrities, etc. Because Dubai had banned Nigerian visa, so every Nigerian who had connection or money used that opportunity to go to Dubai. So then they lied. They lied about the visa ban. They went to India. They lied about FDI. So they just go and they lie. I'm sent you guys a picture now because online it came out that at GCAD 9, Nigeria did had an unmanned booth. Their booth was empty. Every other African country had a beautiful booth. And then the president's aide comes out and says, our booth is not unmanned. We are unveiling it on Thursday, the 22nd. Mind you, the event ends on Friday, and then they unveiled literally the most haphazard. I sent you guys a picture. Somebody took a shirt off their child and hung it up with a Nigerian flag, and they called that a booth. That is just, that's the level of seriousness we're showing as a Nigerian people. But as,
You-
as Charles said, I agree with him. America pulling back creates an opportunity for the middle powers. It creates an opportunity for even cross continental trade to grow. Right? We in Nigeria currently we're hosting the chief of defense staff or chief of defense for different countries in Africa. Right? The Joint Security Conference is holding in Nigeria currently. I think it ends today or so, but we're
yeah.
seeing the need to step in to fill the gap in ways that are pretty exciting for the middle powers, for Japan and for China. South Africa and China are having bilateral talks currently, I think, or last week. To step in where, America is hitting China with tariffs, hitting South Africa with tariffs, and, like, why not? Let's face each other, because the job market in South Africa will suffer a lot if they do not replace their American exports with another country, and China is stepping in there. So when America makes these decisions, like I always say, I think no one hates America more than Donald Trump, because he's eroding their soft power, but also their persuasive, like, economic power by putting all these tariffs and doing all these things. And it's a good time for countries like Qatar, Japan, China, Saudi, and the UAE, who might have not had this opportunity before, but he's created the opportunity for them to come in and build these relations. Now, I don't know if countries
Right.
like Nigeria have serious leadership and they can take advantage of this. However, if you have a serious leader, then it's a good time and a good position to make new relationships.
And I think that two other countries that Africans need to watch. One is Canada, although Canada is pitching more towards Europe. But there is a
Mm.
country that is working
Asia.
Africa. There is one country that's working the African continent and nobody's watching it. Believe it or not,
Brazil.
it's Germany. Germany.
Mm.
Germany sees itself as a counterweight to Russia now, as opposed to how the US
Fair,
was. So,
fair.
yep.
I think that's so interesting because I was thinking you would say the Netherlands or Brazil.
No, it's Germany. I think, but
Mm.
that would be a conversation for another day. We've got to go and do our good or bad event of the week. And for me, my event of the week, believe it or not, it comes from the US.
Mm.
Charles, you will
Mm.
understand this. Almost 30 years ago to the date, or slightly over 30 years ago to the date, Spike Lee and Denzel Washington come back together and do a movie after Malcolm X and after More Better Blues. And me and you, we enjoyed those times. So that made my week. Over to you, Adesua.
Okay. So there's an American reality TV show called, well, it's originated in the UK, but it's called Love Island. You have Love Island UK, you have Love Island USA. This
Yep.
time, you're laughing. This
I'm laughing.
season, Love Island USA blew up in Nigeria, of all places. It was the biggest
Really?
online hotspot, yes, for Love Island USA, with 2.1 million tweets this season, peaking at 574,000 tweets in a single day. However,
Wow.
However,
Why?
what has happened is that international audiences hate the Nigerian fans. They say they are super toxic. They say perhaps it's the first time their votes have ever counted in their lives, so they're taking it too seriously. They use VPNs and purchase American phone numbers to be able to vote in this show. They also found, interestingly to them, but not surprisingly to me, that usually people who watch these shows support people who look like them or are like them. But Nigerians hated the
Mhm.
black girls. In fact, they gathered themselves together to support an Arab woman called Huda, and were posting racist, violent, vile memes against the dark-skinned black women. And I'm like, that is only not surprising. It's only surprising if you're not Nigerian. So they have now done, the BBC has done a report on this. Business Insider Africa has also done a report on this about Americans
Oh,
are
I'll check that
hoping,
out.
they are hoping
I
that the Nigerian fans go away.
now you understand why the enhancement and bleaching industry is exploding. So we hate ourselves. Charles, over to you.
Yeah, you know, Bob, there was this, and that's why, you must have followed this story where the Israelis killed six journalists
Yes.
Mm,
in Gaza in a bombing. It's coming a fairly frequent thing, but now they it brought the number of journalists killed to around 251. But here is the thing about that that is the largest number of journalists ever killed in world history in a conflict.
Wow.
And and so I was startled. So I, in fact, they they said it is more than World War Two because guess how many journalists were killed in World War Two? 69.
Whoa.
And you combine the Vietnam War for the US, you combine the Afghanistan and Iraq, to World War Two. It is still less than the Israelis have killed since October 2023. So it was really it was sobering, but but also a, a whole new insight into the history of the death of journalists in conflict.
Yeah.
Had because if you think of it, Bob, it
Yeah.
means that in an average year,
Mhm.
more journalists are killed in peacetime than have been killed in all wars.
mm. You know,
I mean,
Charles,
even in
Charles,
Yeah,
Charles, I must say this because yesterday, because on Monday the story dropped, and yesterday I woke up and I was nearly crying because I saw it on live. Because the I didn't see it live, but I saw the video of it because they did what they call a double tap assault. So they
yeah,
first
yes,
sent
yes.
in a bomb to the hospital, and they targeted there, which is where the journalists go to get good Wi-Fi service. So they're all standing on this balcony, and a bomb comes in, and then they wait until the first responders get there, and then they send in another bomb, and you see that happen. It's recorded. You see that happen, and it's for me, it's insidious, right? It is TV level villainy and evil. The what we Who we have seen do this is terror groups. You see,
Mhm.
this is that's what the villain in the Hunger Game does. Like, this is not, it is insane to think about, not just the fact that they are targeting journalists and then saying they work for Hamas, like Anas from Al Jazeera. They targeted him, but they said everyone else who works with you can also die. But now they said they're targeting a camera. A camera. They said they were targeting a camera and intentionally killed multiple journalists. It is actually, it's like I can't even get my mind around what is going on in Gaza.
Those chickens will one day come home to roost, but us guys have to go. So thank you, Charles. Thank you, Adesua, and to you guys who come in every week to listen to us or watch us on YouTube. Please follow, like, and subscribe. So see you again next week.
Thank
All
you,
right,
Bob.
guys, you take care now.